in North Mississippi, they do all the, catfish grappling.
Noodling.
It's called noodling. It's called grappling. It's called insanity. Whatever. Like if you go to Grenada Lake, like they've got these big old open drums, especially when they bring the water down. And those drums are so the fish will swim up in them, the big catfish. And you stick your hand in there and you can wiggle your fingers. And they bite onto it.
I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
Might be an baby alligator in there wanting to.
I'm more worried about snapping turtle. But
Yeah,
anyways,
me too.
hey guys, welcome to the Words with the Woodsman podcast. You're joining in on, Andy showed us a video a few minutes ago on YouTube. What was it called?
So in the Keys, I think it's Isla Morada, there's a place called Robbie's. And what you do is you feed tarpon. These are real wild tarpon, but they know they're going to get fed. So you buy a little bucket of fish and you put your hand in down there.
So they're like dolphins. They know that they've been trained to.
Yeah.
And they're huge. So you'll get a kid that'll come up there, he'll jump, he drops it. So I went there one time with my uncle. We knew what this place was. We knew what to expect. And he made this commitment to himself that he is not going to look and he's not going to lift his hand.
He's committed.
He's committed. There are other fish mixed in, including a couple random sharks, but they're not the deadly ones, like a nurse shark mixed in or whatever.
Okay.
So
Wow,
he puts his hand down. He's holding it there. The sucker comes all the way up to his elbow. And he doesn't move. Then gravity, he falls down, comes off, and he kind of scrapes the back of his knuckles and he's bleeding. But it was like the best day of my uncle's life. He was so excited.
That's absolutely insane.
It is insane. I encourage you, go check out the videos.
Well, and if you, for all these freshwater boys, I grew up down there. I see you have a Stay Salty hat on. Look at you.
Yeah, it's from
repping.
Alaska.
You're repping the saltwater. I grew up on the Gulf Coast. And so, yeah, same kind of similar area, except northern part of the Gulf. But tarpon are huge. They are massive fish. So, yeah, go watch this video if you really want to get the true feel of how terrifying that would be.
Yes.
But yeah, Mississippi, the closest thing we had was the noodling. And those people are just insane. Like, it's nuts. But they get some big catfish.
Because some of them go underwater to put their hand in there.
Oh, they have to. Yeah. It's insane.
I don't need Mr. Crocodile or Alligator coming up with me.
I've had some wild animal experiences, I guess that's kind of prepared me to be the woodsman,
Yeah, there you go.
I went duck hunting one time. I was duck hunting with my dad. And so when you duck hunt, you can only put 3 shells in the gun. That's just the law when it comes to duck hunting. And so you have to have a plug in your gun so you can only put 3 shells. And the game board will check that. And so we had, I had my regular 3 shells. I'm shooting wood ducks and I've got, I think it's like number 4 shot. And so it's pretty heavy load because the ducks they were flying pretty high. And so we wanted those heavy loads to be able to reach them. Well, where we were, the gum pond that we were hunting out of, we were waiting. And so the gum pond that we were hunting, there was all kinds of beaver sign everywhere. In fact, I almost flooded my waders because I was walking through, how that story you had about the baptism?
Yeah.
We talked about a few weeks back. Well, I was walking through the gum pond and I stepped into a beaver run and it went from like 3 foot deep to 5 foot deep in one step. And so like I almost flooded my waders. Well, that was my first bad interaction with this dude. Well, I get into the pond and they're doing that tail slapping thing, which is a territorial thing. Mm-hmm. I found out that when they go to slapping their tail in the water, they're trying to scare off predators or, rival beavers, I guess. I don't know. But so he started tail slapping and I'm like, he must not be too glad I'm here. Well, I looked up and the dude's swimming towards me. Like he is swimming at me.
But you have a gun.
I have a gun, which is helpful. Helpful. And so I
just got some big teeth.
I just put the bead on him and I pulled the trigger. And of course, the water flies up and I think, I think I got him. Okay, perfect. So I can go back to duck hunting.
He was wearing a vest.
Well, he must have been because I looked back, I continued duck hunting and I look over and he pops up again, but he's closer. This dude, we went through this like 3 times. And finally, when he got about 30 feet away, I don't even know if I'm a bad shot or what happened, but I finally got him after the 3rd shot, or I convinced him to leave me alone, that it wasn't worth it. But thank goodness it was on the 3rd time because I was out of shells.
He's probably a listener.
Yeah.
But there was that experience, but I don't think anything tops my emu story. Have I told you guys my emu story?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So rural Mississippi, okay, somebody paint the picture here. I'm in elementary school, about the 5th grade, okay? So we're out on the playground and we're just, doing what 5th graders do. We're having a good time, right? Party is happening on the playground. Well, I look up and have you ever seen an emu? Randy, it kind of looks like Andy. He's got like the long neck and he's really tall. No, but it's like a smaller ostrich, okay?
You have one at your school?
Yeah, he shows up.
What
Yeah,
do you mean?
he visits.
He just shows up.
Unannounced.
He's wild?
No, he's not wild. There was an emu farm.
Okay,
That's the
a little
thing.
more context.
That's the thing. There's an emu farm.
Did he have a backpack? Like, what's this emu?
He's the mascot that runs around.
No,
East Mississippi Elementary emu.
Did he pack his own lunch?
well,
I mean,
no. There's an emu. So back like in this, I guess, in the late 90s, they thought that emu eggs were going to be the way of the future, right?
Oh, boy.
Because they're massive. Like it's like Jurassic Park, like size eggs. And I guess you can sell them for like $5 an egg, I think is what, and I've never tried it, but I heard you can scramble them just like regular eggs. Okay. So
That's a lot of scrambled eggs.
but that's a big egg. But just think that one egg, like you can make an omelet out of one egg, right? Probably can make 2 omelets out of one egg. But anyways, that's beyond the point. So there was an emu farm because evidently this farmer thought that, hey, this is the way of the future. So he has all these emus at his farm. Well, he's near the elementary school and this emu escaped his farm. And so the emu comes running through the playground. Think about this from the position of our teachers. Our teachers are like, oh my gosh, like this is like Jurassic Park happening.
did he jump the fence? Like,
We didn't have a fence.
They didn't have fences
We
back
didn't have
then.
fences. We live freely, Andy.
Okay.
And so these teachers are like trying to get us to go inside, right? And of course, all the 5th graders are like, this is awesome. And so this emu's running through. Well, in Loosedale, there's at the time, maybe they have it now, but there was no animal control.
Wait, hold on. What is it? The ostriches? Never mind. I was thinking ostriches that they race.
They race ostriches, yeah. Well, emu's just like a smaller version of an ostrich.
But I'm just thinking of 5th grader jumping on that and taking it for a ride.
He was moving a little too quick for that. Well, there's no animal control. And so they call the sheriff's department, okay, to take care of this. And so like 3 police deputies come showing up. And could you imagine being their spouse, like them trying to explain this? Like, could you imagine being one of these deputies and trying to explain to your wife, like what happened that day? So you show up to this call, this emu escape.
I had an assailant I had to take down.
I don't even know what like police have like codes for everything. Like, what's the code for released emu? Like, I have a 513 distressed bird. And so they get this emu backed in this corner. And what's funny is even as a 5th grader, I knew what was happening. They begin to like rationalize who's going to be the one to tackle the emu. And they're like, I'm like, are we going to rock, paper, scissors this? Like, really what happened in true leadership fashion, what happened was the person with the lowest rank got voluntold that they're going to be the one that's going to tackle this emu. So this one cop gets up there and he's trying to make himself as wide as he possibly can. And this emu's in a corner. So he's like ready to fight. And so they finally he runs up and he tackles this emu because the farmer's like, don't shoot him. He cost me too much money. Don't tase him. Don't like you're going to hurt.
Dangerous as in like
They can,
other than beaks.
they
They don't
kick-
have claws.
They can kick the snot out of you.
Yeah, but they couldn't cut you up.
We need a 1v1
Well-
Randy against one.
Go look this dude up. He's got like raptor claws on him. Like he can, yes.
Then I must be thinking of something.
Because this cop was all beat up and cut up and like he grabbed this emu, tackles him to the ground. They have to handcuff his feet together. Not the emu, not the cop.
That would have been funnier too.
They handicap the cop for the battle.
This is a training exercise. Hey, he can
Get
tackle.
your feet handcuffed.
He can tackle. He can
Gets an
tackle.
emu.
He can tackle any assailant now. Like this is your guy. This guy went to the NFL after this. But like the dude's like beat up. His clothes are like cut up. Like all this kind of stuff. Well, he gets this emu to the ground. They handcuff the emu's feet together, and then they try to figure out how to get him to the car. Like the farmer didn't bring a truck or a trailer or nothing. This farmer helped out nobody. All right. So the police officers, like, it's like one guy gets the head, one guy gets these kicking feet, and they put him in the back of the patrol car. And so this emu, all he's doing is laying in the seat thrashing, and he's like kicking the glass, like kicking the side of the car. But that is burned into my brain. Like, it will never leave me.
That would have been the best 5th grade experience.
It was amazing. Yes.
So what did the farmer come with? If he didn't bring his vehicle to come get this, what did he bring?
Well,
His wife's
you know,
Honda Civic?
Bicycle.
well, if you thought, you
wrote
would
another
think,
emu.
you would think that an emu farmer would have like equipment to handle emus, right?
Like a cage.
Like a cage. Like, I was thinking, like, what's that? That pole with the rope, the loop on the end of
Yeah,
it.
that they use for dogs and
Like,
cats.
I keep going back to Jurassic Park, but they use that in Jurassic Park. Like, I imagine like an emu farm is like a raptor farm. Like that's what my brain. I got like Chris Pratt in my head, like holding his hand out.
Wait, you guys didn't take a 5th grade trip over there? After?
No, oh, it'd been a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could
So-
learn more about emus.
I was fishing one time, and I remember where I was at. I was on a sandbar in Tampa Bay with my uncle, and
Same uncle that had the
same one.
okay.
Yep,
Tarpon Jim.
Tarpon.
his name's Uncle DJ.
Tarpon DJ.
Yep. So we're fishing, and there's these rocks, and I'm like, look, this is amazing. If I throw them at these seagulls, they know it's coming, so they move. And I was like, Uncle DJ, watch this. I threw a big rock. None of them moved. None
Kill
of
a
them.
seagull.
I hit one, and he wasn't happy. So you talk about ingrained in your head. I had watched my uncle hand-to-hand combat this thing.
What is it? Crows? Is it crows that remember everything? Like, I think it's crows that don't forget. Like, there might be some seagull out there that's like plotting your demise. I'm gonna remember this kid threw a rock at me.
Well, maybe.
I don't know what the life expectancy of a seagull is, but I know that there was this one when we were I don't remember where we were, but we was down on the coast, and there was this one poor kid that like started feeding them with French fries, but they underestimated how many seagulls would show up.
Oh my gosh.
So like imagine like a 5-year-old like holding up a French fry running from like this flock of seagulls that's chasing.
They're aggressive at times.
They're aggressive.
So in the Sioux, where I'm from, there's a ferry that goes over to Sugar Island, and there's a place called Clyde's where you eat, but there's a park where you can sit, and there's always seagulls.
There's a lot of names you just dropped at me all at the same time.
Yeah, I know, it didn't all make sense. But you can eat there at the park. Well, when I took the whole family up there, my mom and sister and all them were up there was a seagull, and I called him Fred because he would answer to me. What's going on, Fred? And he'd say something, and I'd throw him some food. Or
You had a pet seagull
yeah, pet
named
seagull.
Fred.
Named Fred. So when I went to Alaska, I took a picture of a seagull. I said, "Look, Fred came with me," and so my mom and sister thinks it's funny because it was kind of funny because that bird would just follow us.
Because you had food.
Because he liked me, not because I
No.
had food.
He thought he was going to get a meal.
He wanted you to feed him. That's what that was all
You
about.
were feeding him,
Uh,
which hopefully some game warden heard that. His name is Randy.
now hold on.
Justice for Fred.
I was by the reservation. So
Oh my gosh.
You act like this is like diplomatic immunity or something like
hey,
that.
it is when you live up there. Once you cross that, nobody can touch you.
I don't think that's a true thing.
Oh,
I had this guy in college that he thought he was from, where was he from? He was born in I think it was like Nigeria or something like that, but he grew up in Belgium. Okay. So he lived in my dorm, and his name was Joe. I think that was his American name. I don't think anyone in Belgium's named Joe, but his name was Joe. Well, Joe was convinced that he had diplomatic immunity. Like, so he thought that was like a license, like, to do whatever he wanted. And the more he talked about it, like, and I was like his RA. Okay. So I was the RA of the dorm of his floor. And I'm like, Joe, you say this so much that I think you're not joking, right? You think, please don't get pulled over and say I have diplomatic immunity. Like, no.
In South Mississippi.
In South, like, you're gonna get tased, man. And he thought he could get away with anything. Like, he thought he could bend like the rules of the dorm because I have diplomatic immunity. I'm like, no, you do not. That's not how this works.
well, reservation has their own laws.
So Randy thinks okay. I tell you what.
You can be speeding and cross into there, and then they're going to stop.
We're going to call up. We got a few police friends. We're going to call them up, and we're going to see if you have diplomatic immunity.
There's no reservations for them to worry about around here.
I don't think that's how any of this works.
Well,
Someone please comment on the podcast.
any of my family.
Do
that's
you
listening-
think Randy has diplomatic immunity, and how far should we take this?
Well, okay, I can't do something here in Tennessee, take off running, and not expect them to chase me. But it's like little petty.
But you're here in Tennessee.
I would.
yeah, I mean, it's over.
So you're
for me
going
if I-
to drive to the reservation to commit a crime. So you can't on your own reservation.
No, I'm saying like committing a crime here. I couldn't run all the way up north. I'm just saying like if you're like.
I'm pretty sure Andy and I would chip in to get you just to see you tased one time.
I've already said that because I think it's funny to see somebody get tased while they're running because they lock up and they look like a fish and then they just fall.
Yeah.
I hope he has to tase you twice, so it like doubles the current.
Who do we need to talk to make this happen?
I know exactly who.
Okay. Well,
Guys,
guys,
he's listening.
if he's not, we'll make him aware.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are coming up on our first break. When we get back, we'll dive off into the book of James, so stick around.
When you're recording.
Hey, guys, welcome back to the podcast. So we are in James 1, verse 26. So last podcast, we spent the whole time just talking about guardrails and boundaries, and I thought it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
But this week, so James goes directly from that, but then he starts like stepping on some toes. So I think before I read this, I feel like once again, back to context, right? Because that matters, is this was written to Christians, right? So they're scattered out. Things aren't good in the Roman Empire. They're being persecuted. They've got a lot of persecution that's on the way. And so I think that's important context. But then in verse 26, he jumps off into this. And he said, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. That's
Strong.
That's some strong words right there. But the thing is, and we were kind of talking a little bit about this offline, but that is so true in the aspect of, one of the quickest ways as a believer, one of the quickest ways that I can render like my witness, my ability to share Jesus to people, my credibility, the quickest way I can render that worthless, to use James's word, is with my mouth. Like how you treat people. Because, and let's just go ahead and say this, what this is not saying that you can't stand up for what you believe is right. And that's not even saying that you can't give tough teachings, right? Or tough, words of wisdom. Because sometimes, even Jesus, like you go take a look all throughout the New Testament in the Gospels, Jesus said some very unpopular things. In fact, he claimed to be God, which he was God, but to them that they considered that blasphemy. We're in Holy Week right now, which is leading into Easter, and one of the things he's known for doing that week was clearing out the temple and flipping the tables, right? Like Jesus did some stuff that made people unhappy, but Jesus, his intentions were always to push people to the Father, right? And the other thing is the things that Jesus spoke out on and spoke harshly on were things that were worth that. And so I just want to point that out, because when you look at this verse, what he's saying is, hey, if you call yourself Christian, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, but you don't keep a tight rein on the words that you say, in the sense of we as believers shouldn't be ripping the waiter because they brought us the wrong food, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's something that's worth, and I'm just using that as an example, right? But I don't think that's something that's worth us jumping on someone about, right? And not to mention, I haven't even touched getting on what you see on social media, where people are just nasty to one another over things that spiritually and ultimately eternally don't matter.
Yeah. Politics is
a big one.
Gosh.
Like you just see it all over. And what, it really bothers me when I see believers, people who I know are followers of Jesus, right? Who, it's one thing to stand up for something that you believe is right? Like but it's a totally different thing when you're just spewing venom towards people just because either they're different than you or they believe something different. There's ways to go about that, right? You can communicate your beliefs in a way that just that doesn't tear people down
Yeah.
and go after people personally.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about the waiter. We were at a fast food place and they messed up Devin's order and apparently gave the sandwich to the person behind us, but they redid that person's order behind us, but didn't do ours. Instead of being mad about it, it was like, okay, all right, well, we'll pull up here.
I
Yeah.
hope it was a steak.
No.
I'm just kidding. Well, so Josh, I was at a leadership conference one time, and the guy it was a guest speaker, and he was talking about he goes into companies, sometimes big companies, and he tries to evaluate them to understand why they're doing well, why they're not. Well, he was hired this particular time to help a company that had the most talented group of individuals, but they just weren't succeeding. It's a Fortune 500 company. And he's in there, he's starting to learn. He's spending time with the CEOs, spending time with decision makers, department heads. And he went to a conference at a convention center, and he listened to the CEO give this magnificent speech about togetherness, working to, just in unity. And he was like, wow, that was really good. And he was trying to put his thumb on what was going on. And he was leaving the conference and he noticed the CEO was in front of him. One of the employees cut the CEO off by accident at a stop sign, pulling out of the conference, and he went berserk, yelling things, beeping the horn, like absolutely berserk, and profanities, etc. And it's one thing to stand in front of a group of people and say all the right things. It's another to live it.
Yeah.
And so he was like, the CEO was the problem.
Well, and like that's a great example because look, that's pointing to what if you're going to call yourself a follower of Jesus and you're going to carry that banner, and I hope you do, right? I hope that you, those of you who are listening, are followers. And if you're not, we'll help you with that. Just message us. But the thing is if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, and that means you've got to live up to what you speak. Does that mean you're going to be perfect? No. Later on, I'm going to jump in the future, right? James 3, whenever we get there, we're going one verse at a time, so it could be 3 years from now,
Year or two.
but in James 3, he talks about how, how hard it is and how it's nearly impossible to control your tongue, right? And what James is not saying, he's not saying you're going to get everything right. He's not saying that you're even going to say all the right things, because we all get mad. We all say things we shouldn't. That's still sinful, right? Like you still should repent of that. But that's the point, is what he's saying is that you come back around and you go, hey, Andy, I'm so sorry that I said that to you. Yeah. Like that was not right of me to do that. And it makes me think of, arguments that I have with my wife or with family members. Or even just people that you encounter in public, right? It's, as a believer in Jesus, I have to keep a tight rein on my tongue. And even if I have to speak something, if I need to, it's perfectly fine. I think people understand that. It's perfectly fine to speak. In fact, you should speak truth to people, but there's a right and wrong way to go about it. And for so many times, and I grew up in a small country church, and so many times I saw not just small country churches, but I saw in even some of the larger churches, I see people fighting the wrong fights, right? They get all up in arms over, I'm going to use a dumb example, right? They get all up in arms of like the color of the carpet, or whether or not you should be able to bring coffee in this place or do this or do that. And I'm like, guys, you're missing it. You're fighting the wrong battles. When the reality is we got people who are lost that Jesus died for, that could have a better life if they knew about him. And so for me, when I was reading this, like as a believer, you set an example everywhere you go. And what did Jesus say that we would be known for? Our love for one another.
When there's so many people that don't go to church or are hurt because of those conversations they've had with people, at the end of the day, we are all human, but that doesn't change who God is. And that doesn't change that God sent his son for us. And, like Josh said, we're about to enter the Easter season, and that brought new life to all of us. Yeah. So life is completely different because Jesus is who he said he was and rose from the dead. None of those conversations with individuals at church impact that. So
Well, another thing that kind of breaks my heart on this is and I know you guys probably have run into people like this, and I've been this person at different stages in my life, okay? But there's too many times, like, you ever heard someone that, like, they take, I always speak my mind, like they wear that as a badge of honor, right? And they say these things and they trample over people, and they do all these different things. They take joy, almost like they take joy in that. And then they go, well, I'm a believer in Jesus. And I'm like, bro, what kind of example like are you setting? Like, if you go take a look in the Bible, the kind of things that when Jesus would address the difference between Jesus addressing the Samaritan woman at the well, right? So she committed adultery. She did all these things. Jesus spoke truth to her. He didn't hold back on that, right? But he also showed her kindness.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between that and how Jesus spoke to the Pharisees. Well, Jesus went after the Pharisees. I believe his intent there was to push them towards the Father too. But he was also very stern with them and spoke truth to them. But he wasn't doing it to rip them apart. He was doing it to help them realize where they were missing it. Right? Even his brood of vipers, like he calls them a brood of vipers and he calls them whitewashed tombs, right? And the thing is he was doing that to try to remove like the scales from their eyes that were keeping them from seeing, oh my gosh, you're completely missing it. We had this conversation in our woodsman group a few weeks ago. And sure, Randy, you remember that. I don't think you could make it to that one, Andy. But it was, how often do we get caught up on the wrong things, right? And we get so bent out of shape over things that ultimately have no eternal significance, and we miss the things that are eternal because of that.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually a good conversation, that meeting about it, because I think we talked the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, it was all about that and removing the scales off your eyes so you could see. I mean, that's even in the Bible about how there was people that following Jesus because it was removed, and some of them still had it. It's kind of like, I don't know, like somebody's got their hands over their eyes and they can't see what's in front of them. But
Well, and the thing is that, I had someone explain this to me. And I thought it was very good, but he actually drew the picture, and I'm going to try to explain this in a way that makes sense on a podcast form. But he drew a triangle, right? And it made it like, it's kind of like the food pyramid where you have different sections, right? And he said there's 4 D's when it comes to disagreements in the Christian world, right? And everyone wants to escalate everything, right? Everyone has this tendency. And so imagine a triangle, right? The very tippy top of the triangle, which is the smallest section, is things that we would die for. That's the first D. Very small section, not a lot of things fit into there, right? In fact, for this explanation, he actually said, like, one thing fits in there, and that is Jesus is Lord. Right? I would die for that. Like, you showed up, you put a gun to my head, deny Jesus. I hope that we would, all 3 of us would go, yeah, absolutely. Shoot me for that. And so you got die for. The next section, which is it fits a little more things in there, is divide. So you got things that you would die for, you got things that you would divide for, right? I know that doesn't really make grammatical sense, but just go with me.
Still a D at least.
It's still, yeah. But the things that you would divide for are things that, they're not quite to the level of die, but they're things that, if we have this discussion, I'm gonna go, hey, I can't really be a part of this. Like, if someone walked up to me and said, hey, this race or this gender or this, or that they can't be saved, I would go, okay, I don't believe that. I'm going to tell you how I feel about that. But if you as a church are saying that, I'm probably never going to come to your church again, right? We're going to divide over that, because I'm like, that's not okay. And then the next one is things that we would debate over, right? And so it gets a little bit bigger, but it's not quite all the way to the top, right? It's a little bit bigger, things that we would debate over. And these can be secondary issues like theological debates or baptism debates and all this kind of stuff. Like, those things fit into that category. And it's not really something I would divide over necessarily, but it's something that I might have a friendly debate with you. And then the last one is just decide. And what things that fall into that biggest category of decide are things like, these, what kind of worship do you do? Contemporary or do you do traditional? Do you have a screen or do you not have a screen? Like, are you multi-site or are you single site? Like, these are not things that I'm certainly not willing to die for, and I'm not going to split up with you over that, right? And I'm probably not even going to debate you on it, right? Like, it's not worth
a preference.
It's a preference. But so many times, the reason why I said all this, if this makes any sense to anybody, the reason why I said all this is because there's so many times we try to shove everything into like that die for category, or maybe a little less dramatic, that divide over category. We try to shove everything in it, and that's not the place for that.
Right.
Like, you might have a different preference of a type of worship, whether it be contemporary. And I know people that love hymns, and that's where they connect to God over hymns. That's not my preference, but here's the deal. If you call Jesus Lord and I call Jesus Lord, we're both going to be standing before him in heaven. So ultimately that debate doesn't matter.
Right.
And so to me, it's not worth tearing down my brother or my sister. It's not worth me destroying my witness. It's not worth any of that. And I think, you go back to this verse, I think, and I'm going to jump to verse 27 because we're almost out of time. I don't want to leave us in just verse 26 on this, but James tells us where to go with this. He says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this. And I just want to point out, he says accepts. It doesn't mean that we're getting this perfect, right? But the things that he accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Mm-hmm. He says, hey, you have a mission. And so there's so many times, and I'd love to encourage anyone that's listening and this is a word to me too, of we as believers, let's not get caught up on the wrong things. Verse 26 is our warning. Verse 27 is our mission in this, right? Yeah. And don't get caught up on, the political debates or all those things have their place, right? But when we begin to elevate those things above the gospel, that's when there's a problem. That's when we begin to fall into this. That's when we have the tendency of, just because you believe something different from me politically or any of those things that for some reason, like, I think I get the license to treat you poorly. No, that's not how this works. It's the gospel's first, and all those other things, they have their place, but we can't put that above the gospel.
Yeah. For me, like, politics being the biggest one because of everybody's divide in it, I don't care. But if you want to talk Jesus, let's do it all day long. I'm good.
Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
To me, that brings more happiness, whether we're divided in hymns or the music or
color of the carpet or right.
Like, that brings me more joy than wanting to talk politics if we got different views, because it causes anger, and I don't understand why. Why? Because it's the world. You're following the world, and you're going with what they want to get us to divide. I don't want to divide. I want us to all go fishing.
Yeah. Well, and
that's what we want to do too.
That's what, yeah. Well, and the thing is here's the deal. Like I said, I'm not saying you can't stand up for what you believe, but there's a right and there's a wrong way of doing that. And it doesn't mean that you got to be a pushover or anything. I'm not saying that. Yeah. The way that you say things to people matters, and you can speak truth to people first off, make sure that one of the things here is everyone thinks they have their own truth. I'm going to say something that's very unpopular. No, you don't. There is one truth, and it's found in the Word of God, and it comes from God our Father. And here's the deal. Lean on his truth. Lean on what he teaches and what he says. He says, I am the way, the truth, and this is Jesus. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes into the Father except by me. And so lean on that, dive into that, and you can speak on that authority of that. But at the same time, the way that we communicate to people matters, because that is the most important thing. So we are about out of time. We'll pick up, I believe, with verse 20, chapter 1. Verse 1 of chapter 2. We made it through a whole chapter. And we're going to get into don't show partiality. I love it. So this will be a good conversation. So we'll see you guys next time. Stick around.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Words with Woodsman podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. We'll see you next time.